Hello, and welcome to my home. It's absolutely stunning, isn't it? Come, let me show you around. The gardens are just beautiful this time of year. Right this way!
Charity entered the world surrounded by so much comfort that hardship felt like a distant rumor to her. From her earliest memories, life had always been easy, polished, and carefully prepared in advance. She lived in a grand house in the heart of the city, a building that didn't just sit among others, but seemed to announce its importance. The walls gleamed with fresh paint, the compound stretched wide and orderly, and the gate swung open confidently, as if it knew powerful people lived behind it. Inside that home, effort was unnecessary. Nothing waited to be done because everything was already handled. Now, I beg, let's slow down a bit. You see that cold bottle of Coke beside you? Take a sip. Our pace is running too fast. Charity grew up without learning basic household tasks. Washing clothes, sweeping floors, or making her bed were things she had never done with her own hands. A steady stream of maids moved quietly through the house, attending to every need like unseen spirits. If Charity wanted water, she didn't get up, she shouted. If her school uniform wasn't perfectly pressed, she raised her voice even higher. If food arrived a few minutes late, she reacted as though a great offense had been committed. Though she was still a secondary school student, Charity carried herself like someone who ruled the world. Her tone was harsh, and her words were heavy because people feared how she might react. Even grown adults tried to stay out of her way. Giving orders thrilled her. It fed her sense of control and importance. "Why is my breakfast cold?" she once snapped, shoving the plate toward a maid. The woman hurried forward, hands trembling. "I'm sorry, madam. I'll warm it," she said softly. Charity rolled her eyes and clicked her tongue. "If you can't do a job properly, then leave it for someone who can." The maid said nothing. She only bowed her head, picked up the plate, and walked away. Charity felt pleased. To her, this was normal. This was how life worked when money spoke louder than manners. She carried that same attitude to school. Charity attended one of the best secondary schools in the city, a place many parents could only dream of sending their children. The classrooms were neat, the teachers well-trained, and discipline was taken seriously. But Charity behaved as though those rules were meant for everyone else, not her. Those rules never seemed to apply to her. Charity arrived late to school almost every single day. When teachers tried to question her, she responded with a careless smile and walked past as if they didn't exist. Whenever punishment was announced, her parents were summoned, and somehow, by the next day, the punishment quietly vanished. Charity noticed this pattern early, and it only fueled her boldness. She became more daring with her misconduct. During lessons, she rested her head on the desk and slept openly. Other times, she slipped her phone beneath the table, scrolling and grinning while classes continued around her. When teachers called on her, she laughed casually. "Sir, I forgot," she would say, as if learning were optional. Her grades steadily declined, but it meant nothing to her. In her mind, school was pointless. She believed money would eventually unlock every door life placed in her way. Why struggle now when wealth would smooth everything later? Her classmates noticed. Some whispered in admiration, jealous of her lifestyle. Others avoided her completely, harboring deep resentment. But Charity remained unaware or unconcerned. She existed inside her own protected world, untouched by consequences. At home, her parents watched with quiet despair. Mr. Corey was a well-known and respected figure in the city. People spoke to him with reverence. In church, he held a position of authority and often preached about discipline, humility, and strong moral values. His wife, Mrs. Okori, was equally admired, gentle, soft-spoken, and known for offering wise counsel. To outsiders, they looked like the perfect couple raising the perfect child. But behind closed doors, worry filled their home. In the evenings, Mrs. Okori often sat alone, lost in thought. She remembered the little girl Charity used to be, the child who loved bedtime stories, laughter, and long hugs. Somewhere along the line, that girl had vanished. "Good evening, Mommy," Charity would sometimes mumble as she passed by, eyes locked on her phone, never slowing her steps. Other times, she didn't greet at all. Mrs. Okori tried everything. She attempted gentle conversations. She offered firm warnings. She spoke from the heart, her voice heavy with concern. "Charity, the way you are living is not good," she once said quietly. Charity only scoffed. "Mommy, please, everyone is fine. You worry too much." Those words wounded more deeply than open disrespect
the change
ever
as
could.
well. He saw how visitors grew uneasy around Charity. He observed the tension she carried into every room. He watched silently as the child they once knew slipped further from their reach. He also noticed how often the housemaids resigned one after another. He noticed the quiet murmurs that followed his family even within the church walls. One Sunday after service, a woman gently pulled Mrs. Okori aside. "Madam," she said cautiously, lowering her voice, "your daughter is very beautiful, but please watch her character." Mrs. Okori managed a polite smile, but inside, her heart dropped. The embarrassment weighed heavily on her chest. That night, she wept silently in her room, careful not to let Charity hear her sobs. Charity, however, felt completely untouchable. In her mind, her parents' reputation was a shield. She believed nothing serious could ever happen to her. She laughed without restraint, spoke to people anyhow, and brushed aside every piece of advice that came her way. One afternoon, a longtime family friend paid them a visit. During the conversation, a minor issue arose about where to sit. Charity reacted sharply. "Why are you sitting there?" she snapped rudely. The room fell into sudden silence. The woman stared in disbelief. Mr. Okori rose to his feet immediately. "Charity," he called, his voice firm and warning. Charity frowned. "What?" she replied coldly. "You want me to apologize? For what?" In that moment, something cracked inside Mr. Okori. The level of disrespect was more than he could bear. After the visitor left, he summoned Charity to the sitting room. "Sit down," he said, his tone heavy with authority. She sat, her face filled with boredom. "Your behavior is becoming dangerous," he said slowly. "You show no respect to anyone." Charity let out a short, bitter laugh. "Daddy, you're overreacting." That laugh struck him like a slap. Mrs. Okori covered her face, unable to watch. Mr. Okori's voice trembled. "You embarrass us everywhere. Do you think money can hide bad character?" Charity jumped to her feet, anger flashing in her eyes. "I'm tired of hearing this," she shouted before storming out and slamming the door behind her. That night, her parents talked for hours. They spoke about their mistakes. They admitted how they had spoiled her. They spoke about their greatest fear, losing their daughter to pride, laziness, and entitlement. One solution rose between them, heavy but unavoidable. Boarding school. Mrs. Okori's voice shook. "But what if she hates us?" Mr. Okori sighed deeply. "But if she learns, we will have saved her. And if we do nothing, then we will have truly failed her." Outside, the city lights glittered brightly. Inside the house, a life-changing decision had been made. Charity's life was about to change in ways she never imagined. That night, Charity slept soundly, completely unaware that her comfortable world was about to be tested. Respectable parents often carry quiet shame hidden behind polite smiles. The decision did not bring instant relief. After Mr. and Mrs. Okori finally agreed on boarding school, a thick silence filled their bedroom. The kind of silence that comes when love demands a painful choice. Mrs. Okori lay awake long after the lights were off, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts drifted back to Charity's childhood, replaying memories over and over, searching for the moment everything began to slip out of control. Morning came, bright and ordinary. Charity woke up in high spirits, humming happily as she brushed her teeth, unaware that her life was about to change direction. She strolled downstairs late as usual, phone in hand, offering only the faintest greeting. "Mommy, what's for breakfast?" she asked casually, dropping into her chair. Mrs. Okori studied her closely. In that moment, Charity looked harmless, relaxed, carefree, almost innocent. For a second, her heart resolve weakened. Almost. She served breakfast quietly, her hands trembling slightly. Mr. Okori cleared his throat. "Charity, we need to talk later today," he said. Charity didn't look up. "About what?" "Something important." "Okay," she replied with a shrug. That calm response made her parents exchange a knowing glance. They both understood. What lay ahead would be anything
Charity
but
was
calm.
called into the sitting room. This time, both parents sat upright, their expressions firm and serious. No gentle smiles, no soft tones. Charity sensed the tension immediately and frowned. "Why do you both look like this?" she asked, folding her arms. Mr. Okori spoke first. "Charity, we have decided that you will be attending a boarding school from the next term." The words hung in the air like smoke. Charity laughed, a sharp, disbelief-filled sound. "You are joking," she said. "You scared me for nothing." Mrs. Okori shook her head slowly. "We are not joking." The smile vanished from Charity's face. "What do you mean, boarding school?" "A good one," Mr. Okori replied firmly, his voice calm but unyielding. "One known for strict discipline," Mr. Okori finished. Charity's eyes flew open. "No, I'm not going anywhere." Mrs. Okori rose from her seat. "Charity, sit down." Instead, Charity slammed her palm on the table. "You can't do this to me. I'm not some village girl." The words cut deep. Mr. Okori's expression hardened instantly. "Watch your mouth." Charity let out a bitter laugh. "So, this is punishment because of what people are saying in church?" Mrs. Okori's voice trembled. "We are trying to protect you." "Protect me from what? Comfort? A good life?" Tears streamed down Mrs. Okori's face. "From becoming someone you will regret being." Charity turned away, her heart racing. She felt betrayed, like the ground beneath her had suddenly shifted. Without another word, she stormed out of the sitting room, slammed her bedroom door, and locked it. Inside, she cried uncontrollably, throwing pillows, shoes, anything she could reach. That night, sleep came only after exhaustion overtook her tears. The house knew no rest. While Charity cried herself to sleep, her parents prayed quietly, asking for strength and guidance. In the days that followed, Charity grew cold and distant. Her replies were sharp and brief. She avoided eye contact and ignored her parents whenever she could. At the mention of boarding school, she erupted. "You are destroying my life," she screamed one afternoon. One morning, Mrs. Okori tried to pull her into a gentle embrace. "Sometimes," she whispered, "love feels like pain." Charity pushed her away. "I hate you." Those words clung to Mrs. Okori for the rest of the day, heavy, burning, unforgettable. Preparations continued quietly. Application forms were completed, phone calls were made, decisions were finalized. The school they chose was well known, feared even. A boarding school with strict rules, high expectations, and a reputation for breaking pride and rebuilding character. And Charity had no idea how much it was about to change her. Even the most stubborn children. One name kept surfacing during the parents' discussions: Sapil House. And with it came another name, spoken almost in whispers: Mrs. Ofuranta. Parents talked about her in careful tones. She doesn't joke at all. She shapes children. She fears nobody, rich or poor. The stories were endless. Charity overheard some of these conversations and laughed to herself. They can't change me, she thought confidently. Departure day arrived with a heavy atmosphere. Charity packed her bags angrily, tossing clothes inside with loud complaints. "Why so many clothes? Am I going to prison?" No one responded. When they reached the school gate, Charity stepped out of the car and froze. The building stood tall and old, serious and unwelcoming. There were no bright colors, no cheerful decorations. Everything screamed order. Students moved in straight lines, no shouting, no laughter, just quiet discipline. A strange feeling crept into Charity's chest. Fear. Mrs. Okori pulled her into a tight hug. "Remember who you are," she whispered. Charity didn't return the embrace. "You will regret this," she muttered. Mr. Okori nodded slowly. "One day you will understand." As the car drove away, the city disappeared behind her. Ahead lay a new world, one that would not bow to her pride. Boarding school shock. Mrs. Oforanta never raised her voice, yet every word she spoke carried weight. Charity noticed this immediately as she followed the woman across the compound. She walked with calm authority, not rushing, not dragging her steps. Her wrapper was neatly tied, her blouse plain, her hair flashy.
Everything about her demanded respect. "Carry your box properly," Mrs. Oforanta said without turning around. Charity struggled with the heavy trunk, irritation rising fast. Back home, 3 people would have lifted it for her. Here, no one even glanced her way. Students passed by, some sneaking curious looks, others staring straight ahead as if looking around was forbidden. "Madam," Charity muttered under her breath, "they should have provided a trolley." Mrs. Oforanta stopped. Slowly, she turned and looked at Charity, not with anger, but with quiet scrutiny, as though measuring her spirit. "What did you say?" she asked calmly. And in that moment, Charity felt something she had never felt before. Attention without fear. Authority without shouting. Power without noise. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure she was in control. "What did you say?" Charity swallowed hard. "Nothing." Mrs. Oforanta nodded once. "Good, because this is not a hotel. This is Sapele House." The name alone felt heavy. Something sank deep in Charity's stomach. They stopped in front of a long, well-kept building. The floors were spotless, the windows perfectly aligned. A sharp scent of disinfectant filled the air. Inside, everything was arranged with military precision. Beds stood in neat rows. Boxes were placed evenly at the foot of each bed. Not a single shoe was out of position. Mrs. Oforanta pointed to a bed close to the door. "That one is yours." Charity frowned. "Why near the door?" "So you can learn to wake up quickly," Mrs. Oforanta replied calmly. Charity opened her mouth to protest, then stopped. Something in the woman's eyes told her arguing would lead nowhere. "Change into your housewear. Assembly starts in 10 minutes, Mrs. Oforanta said, turning and walking away. 10 minutes. Panic crept in. At home, she took her time with everything. Here, time felt unforgiving. She rushed to open her box, pulling out clothes carelessly. Other girls watched in silence. Some looked entertained. A short, slim girl leaned to her and whispered, "You better hurry. Auntie doesn't play." Charity scoffed. "She's not my auntie." The girl smiled softly. "You'll understand soon." Assembly was unlike anything Charity had known. Everyone stood upright. No talking, no laughter. When Mrs. Oforanta walked past, even the senior students stiffened.
Charity shifted uncomfortably, her legs aching from standing still. That night, she expected rest. Instead, a bell rang. "Prep time," a voice announced. Charity groaned. What kind of suffering is this? She dragged herself to the prep hall. The room was filled with silence. Books lay open, pens moved steadily. Charity stared at her page, exhausted and confused. At home, she had never studied this long. Days passed, and the shock only deepened. Charity was assigned duties: sweeping floors, washing plates, arranging beds. The first time she was handed a broom and told to clean the dormitory, she burst into laughter. "You must be joking," she said. And that was the moment she truly began to understand where she was. The prefect offered a sad smile. "I'm not joking." Charity refused anyway. That became her first offense. Mrs. Oforanta called her aside later. "Why didn't you do your duty?" Charity folded her arms stubbornly. "I don't do things like that." Mrs. Oforanta nodded once. "You will." Punishment followed. Extra chores, longer hours, no excuses accepted. That night, Charity cried quietly into her pillow so no one would hear. She missed her soft bed. She missed her freedom. Most of all, she missed shouting and being instantly obeyed. She tried her old habits, talking back, rolling her eyes, complaining loudly. None of it worked. Every attempt was met with discipline. Every consequence taught her something new. One afternoon, Charity snapped at a junior student over a bucket of water. The girl burst into tears. Almost immediately, Mrs. Oforanta appeared, as if she had been watching all along. "Apologize," she said calmly. Charity shook her head.
Oforanta's
She was
expression didn't change. "Apologize. I won't." That refusal earned her the harshest punishment yet. She knelt under the burning sun for hours. Later, she swept the entire compound. She missed lunch. Whispers followed her. Some students laughed. Others watched with quiet sympathy. During the punishment, Charity noticed something unexpected. Mrs. Oforanta observed from a distance, not with anger, but with something else: concern. Charity pushed the thought aside. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, very slowly, change crept in. Charity learned how to make her bed neatly. She learned how to wash clothes properly. She learned to wake up before the bell rang. One evening, after completing her duties without complaint, Mrs. Oforanta called her over. "You are improving," she said simply. Charity froze. No one had praised her in a long time. "Thank you, Ma," she replied softly. That night, she lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not pride, but awareness. She began to understand how wrong she had been. But growth was not instant. Some days she slipped, some days she argued. Each time, discipline followed, and each time she learned. One rainy evening, Charity fell ill. Fever drained her strength. Mrs. Oforanta personally brought her food. "Eat," she said gently. Charity looked at her in confusion. You care?" Mrs. Oforanta gave a faint smile. "Discipline without care is cruelty," she said softly. And in that moment, something finally broke and healed inside Charity. Is cruelty. Those words filled Charity's eyes with tears. She quickly turned away so no one would see them fall. From that day, something inside her softened. She began to help others without being asked. She greeted people properly.
She listened instead of interrupting. Laughter returned to her life, but this time it was gentle and real. The proud city girl was slowly learning patience. She was learning that respect is earned, not commanded. And although she didn't realize it yet, this was only the beginning of her true transformation, one shaped by discipline, tears, and growth. By the time Charity entered her second term at boarding school, something within her had shifted, even though she couldn't yet put it into words. The sharp anger that once lived in her chest had quieted, like a blaring radio finally turned low. It still appeared sometimes, but it no longer ruled her actions. When the bell rang at 5 a.m., Charity surprised herself. Instead of groaning and dragging her feet, she sat up almost immediately. She rubbed her eyes, stretched, and reached for her bucket. Around her, other girls moved calmly. No chaos, no shouting. The dormitory felt different now. It no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a shared space, a place where life happened together. As she swept the floor that morning, Charity caught her reflection in the glass of a window. Her face looked slimmer. Her eyes looked clearer. She paused and studied herself. "So this is me now," she whispered, almost laughing. Charity was still Charity. She still liked nice things. She still enjoyed attention. But the way she carried herself had changed. She said please more often. She said sorry without struggling. The junior students no longer avoided her. Some even greeted her with excitement. "Good morning, Senior Charity," a small girl said. Charity smiled warmly. "Good morning. Did you finish your prep?" The girl eagerly nodded. A warmth spread through Charity's chest. It felt better than shouting, better than power, better than fear. Mrs. Oforanta noticed the changes even before Charity fully did. She noticed how Charity volunteered to help, how she corrected juniors gently, how she followed rules without complaint, and she smiled quietly because she knew the lesson had taken root. Before being reminded, she noticed how Charity corrected others gently instead of shouting. She noticed how she stayed behind after duties to assist students who were slower or struggling. One afternoon, during inspection, Mrs. Oforanta stopped in front of Charity's locker. She opened it slowly. Inside, everything was perfectly arranged. Clothes neatly folded, shoes aligned with care. She closed the locker and turned to Charity. "Well done." The words were simple, but they struck deep. Charity felt her throat tighten. "Thank you, Ma," she
Charity
replied
lay
softly.
on her bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, she felt something different. Not anger, not pride, but awareness. She finally admitted to herself that she had been wrong. Still, growth was not magic. Some days she slipped back into old habits. Some days she argued. Each time, discipline followed, and each time she learned a little more. One rainy evening, Charity fell ill. Fever drained her strength and weakness wrapped around her body. To her surprise, Mrs. Oforanta personally brought her food. "Eat," she said gently. Charity looked at her confused. You care?" Mrs. Oforanta smiled faintly. "Discipline without care is cruelty." Tears filled her eyes. She turned away quickly. From that day, her heart truly softened. She began helping others without being asked. She greeted people properly. She listened. Laughter returned to her life, but this time it was calm and genuine. The proud city girl was learning village patience. She was learning that respect is earned, not demanded. And though she didn't realize it yet, this was only the beginning of her true transformation, shaped by discipline,
tears and quiet joy. One evening, Charity requested to speak with Mrs. Oforonta. When she finally stood before her, she hesitated. Then the words spilled out. "I'm tired of rules. I'm tired of pretending. I wasn't born for this kind of life." Mrs. Oforonta listened without interrupting. When Charity finished, she leaned back slightly. "Do you think discipline removes who you are?" she asked calmly. Charity shrugged. "When water is dirty," Mrs. Oforonta continued, "you don't throw away the pot, you wash it." Those words stayed with Charity long after she returned to her bed. The next major test came during inter-house chores week. Each house was assigned large sections of the school to clean: fields, classrooms, drainage paths. The work was heavy. Complaints filled the air. For a moment, Charity felt the old resistance rise. Then she took a deep breath, picked up her broom, and stepped forward. "I'll take this side," she said. The girl stared at her. And in that moment, Charity realized something powerful. She was no longer being forced to change. She was choosing to. The inter-house chores week was intense. Stress ran high. Tempers flared. Arguments erupted. Charity had been appointed group leader. The old Charity would have shouted, insulted others, and relished the authority. This time, she hesitated. "Okay," she said quietly to her group. "Let's finish this together so we can rest." Some girls looked surprised. A junior whispered, "Is this really Charity?" The work began slowly. A junior accidentally spilled water. Another girl snapped at her. Charity stepped in calmly. "It's okay," she said. "Let's clean it and move on." Something shifted in that moment. The group worked harder. Laughter returned. Jokes flew around. "Remember when Auntie nearly fainted because of the soap smell?" one girl teased. Charity laughed. A real laugh, the kind that comes from peace, not mockery. They finished their chores early. Mrs. Oforonta came to inspect and nodded approvingly. "You handled them well," she said. Charity smiled shyly. But not everyone was happy about her change. A senior girl named Blessing had enjoyed being feared before Charity's arrival. Now, Charity's quiet confidence and respect drew attention. One afternoon, Blessing cornered Charity behind the dormitory. "You think you are special now," she sneered. Charity took a deep breath. "I'm just trying to do better." Blessing laughed harshly. "You think acting humble will save you?" Charity said nothing. She simply walked away. Blessing began spreading rumors and mocking Charity openly. One day, she even poured water on Charity's bed. The old Charity would have screamed, fought, and demanded revenge. This time, Charity stood still, hands shaking but composed. Mrs. Oforonta was informed. Both girls were called to her office. Blessing expected an outburst. Charity surprised everyone. "I don't know why she's angry," she said quietly, "but I forgive her." Silence filled the room. Mrs. Oforonta looked at Blessing. "Anger often hides pain," she said gently. Blessing broke down, tears streaming. Slowly, the truth came out. Pressure, fear, jealousy, and insecurity. That day, Charity learned a lesson more powerful than authority or fear. Kindness could change people, disarm even the hardest heart. As the months passed, Charity's academic performance improved steadily. She asked questions, she studied diligently, she failed sometimes, but when she did, she tried again. Growth, she realized slowly, was a process, not a prize you earned overnight. When the holidays approached, Charity felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Would her parents recognize this new version of herself? The day they arrived to pick her up, Charity stood tall, her bag neatly packed. Mrs. Okori stepped out of the car
daughter?
and froze.
She whispered. Charity smiled warmly and walked toward her. "Good afternoon, Mommy," she said clearly.
Mrs. Okori dropped to hug her tightly, tears streaming freely. Mr. Okori stood beside her quietly, his eyes glistening. On the drive home, Charity spoke about her school days, about the duties, and about Mrs. Oforonta. "She's strict," Charity said with a smile, "but she truly cares." That night, as Charity helped clear the table without being asked, her parents exchanged a look. The pain, the struggle, and the tough decisions had all been worth it. Far away at Sapele House, Mrs. Oforonta smiled quietly, knowing the seed she had planted in Charity was taking root. Time has a way of testing whether change is real or just an act. For Charity, the true test did not arrive in a dramatic moment. It came quietly, day after day, through choices made when no one was watching, through moments when it would have been easier to slip back into old habits. After the first holiday break, Charity returned to school with a different mindset. She no longer dragged her feet through the Sapele house gate. She greeted the security guard. She greeted the matron. When she spotted Mrs. Oforonta standing near the dormitory, Charity paused and bowed slightly. "Good evening, ma," she said respectfully. Mrs. Oforonta studied her, as always. "Welcome," she replied simply. That was all. But for Charity, it felt monumental. Not the loud, childish pride she once carried, but a calm, steady pride that settled warmly in her chest. Back in the dormitory, girls gathered around her bed. "City girl is back," one joked. Charity laughed. "I hear the village girls missed me," she teased lightly. Everyone smiled. The room was filled with warmth. Charity had changed, not in appearance, but in heart. Laughed, the sound felt warm, friendly, free of fear. As time went on, Charity became someone others could rely on. Juniors came to her for advice. Seniors trusted her with responsibilities. When conflicts arose, she was often called upon to help calm things down. One evening, a junior named Ifona sat on Charity's bed, quietly crying. "What's wrong?" Charity asked gently. "I'm stupid. I'll never pass." A sharp memory flashed in Charity's mind. She remembered being that girl, overwhelmed, anxious, and self-doubting. She placed a hand on Ifona's shoulder. "Listen to me," she said softly. "Grades don't define you. Effort does, and you are not stupid." The words felt familiar, almost like something Mrs. Oforonta might have said. Charity smiled to herself, quietly proud of the lessons she had learnt. Academically, Charity surprised everyone, including herself. She began ranking among the top students, not because she had suddenly become the smartest, but because she had learned consistency, humility, and effort. She read even when tired. She asked for help when she didn't understand. She stopped pretending she knew everything. During prize-giving day, her name was called, not for neatness, not for conduct, but for academic improvement and leadership. Heart pounding, she walked to the front. As she received the award, her gaze met Mrs. Oforonta's. The woman nodded once. Tears stung her eyes. After the ceremony, Mrs. Oforonta called her aside. She said, "You see, hard work speaks." Charity nodded. "Thank you, ma." "No," Mrs. Oforonta replied gently. "Thank yourself." That night, Charity wrote a letter to her parents. Not a quick note, but a heartfelt letter. She apologized for her past behavior and thanked them for never giving up on her. When Mrs. Okori read it, she cried openly. Mr. Okori read it twice, folded it carefully, and placed it in his drawer. Years passed. Charity grew taller. Her voice matured. Her thinking deepened. By her final year in secondary school, she was no longer just a student. She was a leader, a mentor, and a young woman who had discovered the value of discipline, kindness, and self-respect. She was no longer just a student. she had become a role model. New students whispered stories about her. One said, "She was once so proud." Another, "Hard to believe, she's so calm now." Charity sometimes overheard these murmurs and smiled quietly. She did not deny her past. She did not hide it. She had learned to use it. One afternoon, the school organized a character talk for new students. To everyone's surprise, Mrs. Oforonta called Charity to the front. "Tell them your story," she said.
Her heart raced. She looked at the rows of young faces staring at her. She took a deep breath. "I wasn't always like this," she began. "I used to think respect was something people owed me. I was wrong. I learned the hard way that character matters more than comfort, and that change is possible, even when it feels painful." The whole fell silent. Some students nodded thoughtfully. Others listened wide-eyed. Mrs. Oforonta watched quietly, her face unreadable. That day, Charity felt complete. Not perfect, but complete. After graduation, Charity returned home for good. The city looked the same, but she saw it differently now. The house still stood tall. The gate still opened wide. But Charity no longer walked in like a queen, demanding obedience. She greeted the maids politely. She helped in the kitchen. At first, the staff thought it was a phase. "This one will soon stop," a maid whispered. But Charity did not stop. One evening, a maid accidentally broke a plate. She trembled, expecting a shout. Charity picked up the pieces calmly. "It's okay. Are you hurt?" she said. The maid stared, shocked. Mr. and Mrs. Okori watched quietly, thanking God for their daughter's transformation. Even in church, people noticed. "That girl has truly changed," someone whispered. "Yes," another replied. "Boarding school did wonders." Charity did not let praise go to her head. She remembered where she had come from and the lessons she had learned and the person she wanted to be. Years later, Charity returned to Sapele House, not as a student, but as a guest speaker. She stood at the gate and smiled, memories flooding back, the fear, the tears, the growth. Mrs. Oforonta walked toward her, slower now, but still strong. "You came back," she said. "I had to. You changed my life." Mrs. Oforonta shook her head gently. "No," she said. "You chose to change." They sat together under a tree, talking quietly. That evening, Charity addressed the students. "Discipline is not punishment. It's direction." When she finished, the hall erupted in applause. As she walked away, Charity felt peace. Not the loud, childish pride she once loved, but a deep, steady peace that comes from knowing she had truly become herself. From a lazy, rude city girl to a disciplined, kind young woman. From shame to pride, from noise to purpose. Her story spread, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real.